Tumultuous applause followed, but received an unexpected check, for the cot bed on which the dress circle was built suddenly shut up and extinguished the enthusiastic audience. Rodrigo and Don Pedro flew to the rescue, and all were taken out unhurt, though many were speechless with laughter. The excitement had hardly subsided when Hannah appeared with Mrs. March's compliments, and would the ladies walk down to supper. This was a surprise even to the actors, and when they saw the table they looked at one another in rapturous amazement. It was like Marmee to get up a little treat for them, but anything so fine as this was unheard of since the departed days of plenty. There was ice cream, actually 2 dishes of it, pink and white, and cake and fruit and distracting French bonbons, and in the middle of the table 4 great bouquets of hothouse flowers. It quite took their breath away, and they stared first at the table and then at their mother, who looked as if she enjoyed it immensely. "Is it fairies?" asked Amy. "It's Santa Claus," said Beth. "Mother did it," and Meg smiled her sweetest in spite of her gray beard and white eyebrows. "Aunt March had a good fit and sent the supper," cried Joe with a sudden inspiration. "All wrong. Old Mr. Lawrence sent it," replied Mrs. March. "The Lawrence boy's grandfather? What in the world put such a thing into his head? We don't know him," exclaimed Meg. "Hannah told one of his servants about your breakfast party. He is an odd old gentleman, but that pleased him. He knew my father years ago, and he sent me a polite note this afternoon saying he hoped I would allow him to express his friendly feeling toward my children by sending them a few trifles in honor of the day. I could not refuse, and so you have a little feast at night to make up for the bread and milk breakfast." "That boy put it into his head. I know he did. He's a capital fellow, and I wish we could get acquainted. He looks as if he'd like to know us, but he's bashful, and Meg is so prim she won't let me speak to him when we pass," said Joe, as the plates went around and the ice began to melt out of sight, with ohs and ahs of satisfaction. "You mean the people who live in the big house next door, don't you?" asked one of the girls. "My mother knows old Mr. Lawrence, but says he's very proud and doesn't like to mix with his neighbors. He keeps his grandson shut up when he isn't riding or walking with his tutor, and makes him study very hard. We invited him to our party, but he didn't come. Mother says he's very nice, though he never speaks to us girls. Our cat ran away once, and he brought her back, and we talked over the fence, and were getting on capitally, all about cricket and so on, when he saw Meg coming and walked off. I mean to know him some day, for he needs fun. I'm sure he does," said Joe decidedly. "I like his manners, and he looks like a little gentleman, so I've no objection to your knowing him if proper opportunity comes. He brought the flowers himself, and I should have asked him in if I had been sure what was going on upstairs. He looked so wistful as he went away, hearing the frolic and evidently having none of his own." "It's a mercy you didn't, Mother," laughed Joe, looking at her boots. "But we'll have another play some time that he can see. Perhaps he'll act. Wouldn't that be jolly? I never had such a fine bouquet before. How pretty it is!" And Meg examined her flowers with great interest. "They are lovely, but Beth's roses are sweeter to me," said Mrs. March, smelling the half-dead posy in her belt. Beth nestled up to her and whispered softly, "I wish I could send my bunch to Father. I'm afraid he isn't having such a merry Christmas as we are."